Rural Americans deserve access to the best of what our nation has to offer, especially healthcare. Across every state and every community, America's rural hospitals are the first line of defense, protecting our families, neighbors, and loved ones. No matter where you live, hospital care doesn't clock out. They're there 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. Each year, America's over 5,000 hospitals care for millions of patients, providing 24/7 emergency care, delivering babies, cancer treatments, and other life-saving care that patients rely on. Behind every one of those patients are doctors, nurses, and caregivers working tirelessly to keep people healthy and safe. Hospitals are our community's lifelines. They employ our neighbors and keep our families healthy. But now, some in Congress are threatening access to care. Tell Congress, protect patient care to keep America strong. Don't cut rural health care.
This is the Joe Concha Show.
Joe Concha.
Joe Concha.
Joe Concha.
77 WABC.
The late, great David Bowie, who was a good actor as well. I don't know if you ever saw, it was that magician movie with Christian Bale, The Prestige, thank you. And he was good in it. Not the biggest role, but as serious as a heart attack as far as the role he played. And obviously, the music speaks for itself through many decades, so. When you tune into the show, you're going to have to live with my music selections, all 624 from my iPad that I built over the years. Anyway, we'll fade out Mr. Bowie. Elias knows how this works. Welcome, everybody. This is a Friday night in New York City and beyond. I am Joe Concha, Fox News contributor, Washington Examiner, columnist, best-selling author of The Greatest Comeback Ever, Inside Trump's Big, Beautiful Campaign. I'm burdened by what has been. And radio talk show host of this show, 9 o'clock, Monday through Friday, and of course, Sunday, the Tunnel to Towers, Sunday Morning Foundation show. Obviously, that as well is at 11 a.m. So let's just say I stay busy. But you know what? It's a labor of love, because every day when I wake up and then throughout the day watching the news, if you want to call it news anymore, there's just so much to talk about, more importantly, for the purposes of this show, to mock and to criticize. And that primarily comes from the blue team, no question about it. Anyway, I want to go into this first. And this is obviously, I hate leading any show with Rashida Tlaib, but you know, she's not taking this whole thing that's going on in Minneapolis and Minnesota very well. She is part of the squad, of course, with Ilhan Omar and AOC and the Presley girl. Well, here she is talking about and crying, by the way, as far as all she does is see a flyer that says, you know, we'll have our home again. And that's basically from DHS and from ICE, basically saying, OK, we're going to rid the neighborhood, the community, the city of as many illegal aliens as possible who have committed horrible, horrific crimes, and we'll have our home again. We'll feel safe again. There is literally one of the most benign things you'll ever say in the world is we'll have our home again by getting rid of criminals. So we feel like, hey, we could go out at night again. So we could bring our kids to a park again without fearing getting shot. We can obviously let our kids play outside without us having to watch them 24/7 because they may be kidnapped and eventually sent into a child trafficking or sex trafficking ring. I could go on. And obviously we all know about the horrors of some of the criminal acts that have happened in terms of murder, in terms of rape. But here's Rashida Tlaib somehow taking, again, a very innocent phrase and turning it into, I don't know, Nazi stuff. This is cut number 4. Go.
Look at this. We'll have our home again. What does that evoke in you when you see this?
Well,
it literally,
nothing.
When I see it as a Muslimah, as a Palestinian, as a child of immigrants, what? I see that this is something that is evoking, like, I'm not welcome here.
No.
It is very clear what is intentionally happening here.
This is great. I remember that USC, the University of Southern California, once had in their student handbook that they were going to no longer use the word field. In other words, like, hey, let's go out to the baseball field and throw the ball around, or let's go to the quad which may be a field, and put a little picnic together and do some studying. Like field was banned because field, they felt, was related to fields of cotton, therefore slavery, therefore the word field had to be banned. I'm not making this up. Like these sort of things happened. Or banning Washington from being on an elementary or middle school or high school, or Jefferson or Lincoln. In other words, they evoke things, I guess, emotions that say either we're pro-slavery, or we had on Charles Blow last night. We didn't have him on as a guest. Boy, I'd love to have him on sometime. Charles Blow from the New York Times actually went on CNN and said that if George Washington was alive at the same time of Adolf Hitler, they'd be BFFs, best friends. They had so much in common. This is what people are actually saying. And they try to draw these connections, connecting the dots. So Blow goes on CNN last night, quite the name, kind of fits. And he says that the reason why Donald Trump held a rally in October of 2024, I was there, by the way, covering it for Fox. The reason why he was there was because he was trying to send a dog signal to the Nazi community that if you vote for me, then the Third Reich is back in business again. Basically, that was actually he came out and said it. He said that's why Donald Trump held that rally at Madison Square Garden, because back in 1934, 90 years ago from 2024, they held a rally. Therefore, Trump was going for that same vibe, I guess. But the funny thing was, having been in the arena that night, I never saw more Israeli flags and yarmulkes in my life. I mean, boy, big like Israeli presence, big Jewish presence. Now, last check, pretty sure Jews wouldn't be invited to a Nazi party or rally and, survive to even tell about it, quite frankly. So, again, where these people get this stuff from, like when Rashida Tlaib has a big problem with, we'll have our home again. We'll have our home again. Yeah. By ridding the community of bad people. We'll have home again. This is so, and she's crying about it on the, this is why people see Congress in the same way they see shingles, right? Or lice, or just pick something really, really bad. Like that's Congress at this point, because this is the waste of time that we are seeing. But yet these people keep getting elected. You see that Congress, their approval is something like 15%, 14%. Democrats are even seen worse by their own party than Republicans are. So even Democrats hate them, but except for your congressman. In other words, when it's time to get reelected, 90% of people who run for Congress get elected again and again. Just look at Nancy Pelosi, who has been there literally since 1776, right? That's a problem. There should be term limits, I think. There are for presidents. Why not for Congress people? Why not for senators? Why not for Supreme Court justices? I just think you got to be consistent with it one way or another. And I think 2 terms is too short for a president. I think 3 is better. Bloomberg was a 3-term mayor of New York. I didn't have any problem with that. I think he ran a pretty good show over here as far as like just extending the Giuliani criminal policies, tough on crime, and then just ran the city like a business. I know a lot of people hated at the time that Bloomberg banned smoking in bars and restaurants. And people are saying that will kill the bar and restaurant industry because you can't go there and smoke. Then, all the smokers are going to stay home. The problem for that argument is that, a big majority of people already weren't smoking, right? This isn't the 1950s. In 2005, it certainly wasn't the 1950s. So when you actually cleared the air and you could go to a restaurant again without coming home with your hair stinking and your jacket stinking and just everything stunk, even if you didn't smoke, suddenly a lot more people decided they wanted to go to restaurants again because they could breathe while they eat. And the last thing you want is the smell of cigarettes or cigars that obviously kind of ruin the meal in terms of your taste buds. So that's all I'm saying here about Bloomberg. But the whole point is that as far as like term limits, I say for Congress, I think 3 is good. Senate, it's 6 years, so you got to think differently there. 2 is fine. You always want somebody running for re-election because they have to have some sort of incentive to do a good job, you would hope. And then president, I have no problem with 3. I think 12 years, just like in the Senate, 12 years. Congress, fine. Make it every 2 years, six terms, that's fine. And we're all good to go. So anyway, I went off on a tangent here, and I know I had a point around all of this. Oh, yes, of course. That, again, what we need to see more is just common sense in our politics. And where we get a common sense from a lot. And Scott Jennings, from CNN, I get he's the rival. I guess I've met Scott. I've had Scott on this show. Scott's fine just because he's on another network. I don't hold that against anybody, just like if you're on wherever, right? Again, if you make common sense, then I'm happy to talk to you. And Jennings is the only common sense that we see on CNN these days. Here he is just eviscerating Abby Phillip, who is just the most insufferable person on CNN, which is a really hard thing to do. As far as her narrative about ICE, and Jennings just really, I'll just play it and you'll see exactly what I mean. This is cut number 6. Go.
There are documented cases of American citizens being harassed by ICE, of non-citizens being stopped randomly simply based on maybe they have an accent, maybe they happen to be in a particular place like near an airport working for Uber. And at the very least, it raises questions about whether people's constitutional rights are being violated. And if that is the case, isn't it justified for Americans to be concerned about that?
So, according to the reporting, there have been 170 American citizens who have been detained for some period of time during this period in which they have deported about 660,000 illegal aliens. That's about a 99.9997% success rate. If any other government agency got stuff that right that often, we'd be throwing them a ticker tape parade.
He sounded very Herman Cain right.
You know what that is? That is preparation. When I go on Fox, if you guys watch me on there, I never just go on blindly and say, I'll just share what's on my mind. I try to, if I'm going to give you an opinion, I try to back it up with some sort of facts, something concrete. And Jennings was ready for that question. Trust me, he's not. There are no questions being given in advance, unless it's like a town hall for Hillary Clinton, or for Kamala Harris at CNN. Jennings knew that question would be coming, and he had the exact numbers in front of him. Didn't even look down at a piece of paper, like he just knew it. And then that is a TKO right there, or an RKO, rhetorical knockout. Because again, he's right. 99.9977% of apprehensions have been of those in the country illegally. And then obviously you're going to make some mistakes once in a while, and that's fine. But the media would rather concentrate on the mistakes, right? Those very few instances than 660,000 people being apprehended rightly and deported out of this country. Let's go with one more clip just to finish this thought. All right, then we'll go to break, Elias, I promise. This is cut number 2. And Tricia McLaughlin, who works within the Department of Homeland Security, works with ICE on a daily basis. This is the argument that Republicans need to make more and more. The president's making it, but Republicans, especially in the midterms, don't play defense on this stuff, okay? And challenge the media in terms of why aren't you, every time we apprehend somebody who maybe killed a little kid or raped a little girl or murdered a college student or beat XYZ or 100 different examples. And we never see the stories about the bad guys getting apprehended, only about the guys who are apprehending them, ICE. So here's cut number 2, Tricia McLaughlin, God bless you, on CNN, giving a lecture here to Wolf Blitzer, and it is a beauty. Cut 2, go.
Pamela, in the last 5 weeks, we have arrested 2,500 criminal illegal aliens off of the streets of Minneapolis. If I can make my point, I appreciate you having me, but I do want to be able to make my point.
Sure.
The point of the matter is, I have not seen CNN cover who some of those individuals are. An individual from Ecuador who murdered his 3-month-old son. An individual who is perpetuating human slavery and human trafficking. Scores and scores of murders, child pedophiles. Why does the media not talk about that? We continue to see that people love to demonize law enforcement, vilify them.
Exactly. Thank you. If you are a Republican running for Congress, for the Senate, anywhere, does not matter. Basically record exactly what was just played and make a similar argument, because that's what you have to do in these situations. You have to accentuate the positive, and it is very positive what ICE is doing right now to make this country safer. And by the way, we just had the steepest drop in crime in modern history in 2025 during Trump's first year. And don't you think for a second that ICE and DHS and all these either self-deportations or deportations or apprehensions have, if you don't think this has a lot to do with it, you ain't paying attention. This is Joe Concha. I appreciate you paying attention to the Joe Concha Show. Back with so much more in just a moment.
This is the Joe Concha Show, 77 WABC. It's the Joe Concha Show.
Joe Concha.
Joe Concha.
Joe Concha.
77 WABC.
Yeah. 1988. Axl Who was the guitarist again? Oh, man. See, now I'm really dating myself again. Slash, right? Slash, yes, of course it was Slash. Had that hair, glasses. Never saw what that dude actually looked like. Maybe that's a good thing. But welcome to the jungle. I mean, you want to get pumped up. They still play this at sporting events and everything. How could you not? All right, let's fade that out. Welcome to the jungle. We've got fun and games. I think they're still touring. Axl's like 394 pounds now, which is not good because he was like a thin, typical like late 80s, early 90s kind of Kurt Cobain thing going on. Like doesn't probably eat a lot, other things going into the body, whatever. But an iconic voice and Guns N' Roses really, really should have been like among the greats. And I don't know what happened. I have a good feeling I know what happened or good idea. But they had, like, I want to say Don Mattingly. Like, Mattingly had 7 good seasons with the Yankees, and then his back just kind of gave out towards the end. Kind of like Larry Bird also. Bird won some championships, of course, I think 3. But the point is that Guns N' Roses, all right, 88 through like 92, 93, awesome, and then just disappeared. And there's a good reason for that. I would imagine some sort of substances lead to certain disagreements. And then before you know it, they get back together like years later, but it doesn't count, right? It's like when Jordan went to the Wizards, like, okay, that doesn't count. I can't grasp that at this point. So anyway, that's my Guns N' Roses spiel at this point. But I'm sure they're in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Yeah, everybody gets in there. Like Run DMC is in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. They're a rap group, you know, and everybody gets in there now, even though it's not rock and roll. So what's really the point? There's a good reason why it's in Cleveland, because it had a good intention for a while, but now it's like, no. You can't let R&B people in there. I have nothing against R&B. I have nothing against rap. Love rap. But it's rock. It's called the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying. All right. Anyway, let's get to some fun, shall we? Kamala Harris. Oh, boy. You know, I saw a poll today where I mentioned yesterday that Gavin Newsom is leading in most polls as far as being the next Democratic nominee, and we'll get to him in a moment. But Kamala Harris, in a few, I saw 2 today where actually she is leading Newsom. And again, if those are your top 2 choices, you know, that's like rooting, who do you root for, Iran or Iraq? Like, you know, where do you come down there exactly? If those are your top 2 candidates. I mean, Kamala Harris, how could you go through nearly $2 billion in campaign funds, honestly, in 107 days and come away with nothing as far as a return on investment? Like not one swing state that could have bought you. You know, you couldn't at least win the popular vote like Democrats tend to do in elections these days. Nothing. My favorite stat is that 89% of all counties in the United States went more red than blue compared to 2020. All right. Maybe because we had more eyes on this election in 2020, 2024, because in 2020, you could do a lot of things undercover under the guise of COVID and all these rules that were changed kind of at the last second. But overall, despite Trump going against every headwind in the world, including 2 assassination attempts, 91 felony counts, being taken off the ballot throughout various states like Colorado and Maine, he was put back on eventually, and an utterly hostile media to perform the way he did is really incredible. And now we're coming up on the 1-year anniversary of January 20th, where Donald Trump was sworn into office, that bitter cold day in Washington, and the things that he has accomplished over this last year is truly incredible. And the Wall Street Journal actually has a great piece out this week. And the Journal hasn't been, they don't cheerlead for Trump, right? They will criticize and they will give him credit where credit is due, but by no means can you say that they are sycophants for the Trump administration, not even close. And Trump has made that very clear as far as his thoughts on the Wall Street Journal. But this week they had a great piece on how the United States is the only superpower remaining in the world at this point. Not China. China can't do what we're doing, and Russia can't do what we're doing. There's basically no one else left. Europe, certainly the whole European Union can't do what we're doing. As far as unilaterally, Trump, his administration, being able to take out Iran's nuclear facilities at Fordow, one strike, right? Well, several strikes to several different facilities, but one mission, all right? Operation Midnight Hammer. I don't know who comes up with these particular names for missions, but that one's awesome. Like my next fantasy football team will absolutely be Operation Midnight Hammer or Midnight Strike. It doesn't matter. And to carry that out, to take out their nuclear capabilities when George W. Bush and Barack Obama, Hillary Clinton when she was running, even Bill Clinton, you could go all the way back. Like, we're going to stop Iran from having a nuclear weapon. No one did anything until Trump did something. And now Iran said this week that they're not even going to try to rebuild those facilities because they are so decimated. Okay, good. So we did that, took that out without one U.S. casualty. Then Nicolas Maduro, same thing. Everybody's all talk. We're going to get Maduro. We're going to do something about Maduro. His regime will come to an end under my administration. No one does anything because they don't have the balls to do it. And then Trump, snatch and grab, middle of the night, under heavy Cuban, mainly Cuban security forces using Russian-made weapons. And they still got Maduro out of there in 3 minutes and read him his rights. That's impressive, before he could get to his little panic room, a room that, they would have blown away anyway. But to go in there, know exactly where he is, read him his rights, get him out of there, and not one U.S. casualty. Once again, that is incredible to me. That's what superpowers do, right? They say, all right, this is wrong. We're going to make it right. And we're not going to wait for permission from the rest of the world. Certainly not the United Nations. That's certainly for sure. We have a peace deal in Gaza that a lot of people didn't think could happen. And hopefully Ukraine, Russia, it's hard there because Putin has no interest whatsoever in ending that war. Why would he? Right? This is a guy who, it's not Vietnam where you suddenly see the body count piling up and protests happen in the street. And politically, you have to do something different or else you're going to lose power. Putin, that's not a problem. He's not going to lose power as long as he doesn't want to. And obviously, there's a news blackout in Russia. There's basically a news blackout here. Like, you don't see almost anything out of Ukraine. You hear about the death toll, but there's almost no coverage. And, who would go there? Benjamin Hall from Fox got his legs blown off covering that particular conflict. And many journalists have died there. But the point is that, okay, we don't have peace between Russia and Ukraine, but at least Trump is trying, unlike not Biden, but the auto pen, just throwing money at the problem and having war in perpetuity and billions going over to Ukraine in perpetuity without any accountability, by the way, of what's happening. Then you see, obviously, drill, baby, drill, and gas prices coming down the way they are, and the GDP shooting up, and wages up, and unemployment in a very respectable 4% range, and inflation in a very respectable 2.7% range. As far as our economy, as far as our military, and as far as our diplomacy, we now are the only superpower in the world. Now, getting back to our original topic and our original focus, and that's Kamala Harris. What if she won? What would the world look like and the country look like if Kamala Harris and goofy Tim Walz were running this particular country? Just think about that for a moment. All right. And I'm sorry if I'm going to give you some nightmares tonight, but honestly, our culture would be completely different. We'd have men playing against women in sports in perpetuity. We wouldn't have the Trump tax cuts that are now permanent thanks to the big, beautiful bill where people are now going to see in 2026. Because remember, 2025, when the bill was passed, nothing was going to happen in terms of the really good stuff until January 1st of 2026. Just wait till you see your tax returns. And you'd be like, this is what I voted for. The border would be reopened again, I am sure. And we probably would still have an Iran that's threatening the West with its nuclear capabilities. And Nicolas Maduro absolutely would still be in power. And obviously, we wouldn't see all the deportations we talked about in the first block and the expulsion, of all these criminal elements, murderers, rapists, sex and child offenders, and traffickers being expelled from the country. Nope, it would be the status quo times 10. And by the way, just like Biden, Kamala wouldn't be running the country, and nor would Walz. It would be a bunch of people that you don't see, that were not elected, and she'd just be there for the celebrity aspect anyway. And that would be that, just like Obama was. But we have dodged a bullet. And let's go back, shall we, to Kamala Harris when she was vice president. And here she is kicking off a meeting. And this is the stuff that she went with. And again, not only did we dodge a bullet by her not being elected, we dodged a friggin' Scud missile wrapped in a nuclear bomb. This is cut number 5. Go.
Good afternoon. I want to welcome these leaders for coming in to have this very important discussion about some of the most pressing issues of our time. I am Kamala Harris. My pronouns are she and her. I am a woman sitting at the table wearing a blue suit.
What the? Oh, by the way, I'm Kamala Harris. For those who don't know me, I'm the vice president of the United States. I have to introduce myself. My name is Humpty. No, my name is Kamala Harris, and my pronouns are, what was it? She and her. Remember that? I almost said it. BS. Oh, and I'm wearing a blue suit. For all of you who are blind in the room right now, I'm at the head of the table, wearing like a powder blue suit. Looked like she was playing an away game for North Carolina Tar Heels. Like she had to explain this to people. I mean, I know how she got to where she is, but I just can't believe that we almost had her as our president and Tim Walz as our vice president. Anyway, let's now show the contrast of what leadership looks like. And Stephen Miller, who this guy, I mean, I always like to use the term serious as a heart attack. This guy is as serious as a prison fight. You could add the term serious to a lot of different analogies. But seriously, when he goes on television, talk about prep and talk about a guy who really has the courage of his convictions. There is no phoniness here. There is no performance art here. I'm pretty sure that Stephen Miller isn't going to share what his pronouns are in this particular clip. But here he was on Fox last night on the real plan that Democrats have had all along as far as mass illegal immigration. This is cut number 9. Go.
Is it for your audience perfectly, Sean? This was not a loophole. The Biden administration, Secretary of Homeland Security, Alejandro Mayorkas, devised a scheme to fly illegal aliens into the country and then to escort them en masse across the border by the millions and to give them something known as parole, which gives them a work permit, which gives them a social security number, which gives them access to the voting booth. This was the plan all along.
Nothing wrong with that. And, when you said this during the Auto Pen administration, then you were accused of pushing some sort of great replacement theory around whites being replaced by minorities. And that made you a xenophobe and a racist and all these things. Well, I'm not afraid to say this, and I'm a pretty common sense, pragmatic, down to earth guy. Yeah, that had to be the plan. Because politically, how is it possibly politically better for you, expedient, whatever word you want to use, to allow 12 to 15 million people into the border illegally and then kill all your social services as far as sanitation and education, police forces, budgets on the local level, especially here in New York, obviously. That's obviously bad for you politically. But if you're playing a long game, almost like the way the Chinese do, right? Where you say, okay, we take a little hit now. We depend on the media to make sure that this isn't covered the way it should be outside of Bill Maloogian and Griff Jenkins at Fox and Sarah Carter when she was there as well. Outside of Fox, okay, we could survive that. That just goes to a certain audience, which it doesn't, by the way. Plenty of Democrats watch Fox, but whatever. Their plan was the media will help us not, in terms of this won't hurt us politically because they won't cover it, bias of omission, like we talked about recently. And then we'll get enough people in here. And before you know it, we'll give them driver's licenses. And that'll sound pretty benign, right? Because, okay, they got to drive. They have to get places. And then before you know it, well, they probably should have identification. So let's give them a social security card. And then eventually, since they have those two things, then we'll give them a pathway to citizenship because, well, they'll just make the country better as far as everything they have to offer from mostly third world countries and not being educated. The point is, this was the plan all along. And thank goodness Donald Trump was elected and is reversing that now. But a lot of damage has been done already. But make no mistake, if you turn the country into a third world country like we're seeing in Minneapolis, and then they steal money literally from your coffers to take some of that money to donate to only Democrat candidates to put them in power, this is the way it was going to work. And if Kamala Harris was elected, trust me, it would have worked. I am Joe Concha. This is the Joe Concha Show. Back with You're Never Gonna Guess in just a moment.
This is the Joe Concha Show, 77 WABC. It's the Joe Concha Show.
Joe Concha.
Joe Concha.
Joe Concha.
77 WABC.
This is a song called H to the Izzo. E to the Izzy. Yeah, don't know what that means. Maybe I don't know. I'm not supposed to know what it means. It's just a happy, fun little song from Jay-Z. The Terrapins, that's right. Okay, let's fade it off. 2 straight nights of Jay-Z. I could be playing P. Diddy. It could be worse. That's a shame. Shame, that's the wrong word. I mean, that guy was a bad dude. Bad hombre. I shouldn't say was. I guess he's still alive, but you got to think he's going to go to jail for a long time, right? Maybe. I don't know. A lot of money. You could buy a lot of power with that money. Maybe one juror, that's all it takes. But yeah, P. Diddy had some good stuff also. But, you know, people let this power get to their head and they just think they're invincible and no one is above the law. That saying is going through their head over and over again. But if you just watch that one video, just in all seriousness, of him beating the ever-living crap out of his girlfriend, I mean, it's on video. For that alone, you got to go away 20 years. I mean, that was vicious and it's brutal. And you got to think it probably wasn't isolated to that one little incident. That's certainly for sure, outside of everything else that he's accused of. Anyway, going in a really weird direction here. Let's get back to the stuff that we know particularly better than this. And that is, of course, what's going on in Minnesota. Now, Minnesota's 2 states, okay? In a sense where you have, if you look at like every map from elections, particularly recently, Donald Trump only lost Minnesota by 4 points to Kamala Harris. Would you say, well, losing any state to Kamala Harris is completely unforgivable? No, I get that completely. But what we got to understand is that Minnesota, they voted for, just to go down the list, okay, Jimmy Carter in 76, Carter in 80, Walter Mondale in 84, who won 1 state, Minnesota. That was his home state. He won it by like something like 1,000 votes. Like he barely won it, but won it. Voted for Dukakis in 88. Voted for Clinton in 92. Clinton in 96. Gore in 2000. Kerry in 2004. Obama in 2008. Obama in 2012. Hillary in 2016. Biden in 2020. Kamala in 2024. All right. So they have the longest streak of voting for Democratic candidates, some profoundly horrible than any other state in the country. So forget California, Illinois, New York. That is the bluest of blue states. But is it? Because if you look at any map, Minneapolis and the county surrounding it, very deep blue. Everything else basically is red, right? It's Wisconsin meets Iowa. That's the rest of Minnesota. It's farm country. It's Little House on the Prairie. It's Walnut Grove. It's people with, good values. And outside of that one wretched city, it's a red state. And Trump, again, to only lose by 4 when that was seen as an untouchable state. J.D. Vance, play very close attention to Minnesota, especially if your opponent is Kamala Harris or Gavin Newsom, because I don't think people like that will resonate, even with those in Minneapolis who have some common sense, one would think. Anyway, my favorite stat of all time about Minnesota and the 2024 election is that Tim Walz used to be a congressman before he became governor, and he even lost his district to Trump. Like a district that he represented for many years, and Trump went in there and won it. That's how unpopular Walz is, and obviously he's not running for another term, a third term as Minnesota governor, not because he couldn't win. He probably could, right? Again, I mentioned all the names of presidential candidates who have won there before, but he won't run because of obviously all that Somali fraud that happened under his nose. Or did it? Or did he know about it? And when did he know it? The old Nixon term. But this guy isn't running for a reason. And it's probably because as you peel this rancid onion off more and more, you're going to find out that a lot of politicians certainly had knowledge of this and may have just looked the other way, just like the stupid media, like the Minneapolis Star-Tribune, how they did not cover this for years. Or if they did, little pinpricks here and there. See, we're covering it, not to the tune of Nick Shirley. Oh, who's Nick Shirley, by the way? A 23-year-old kid in a hoodie with a cell phone who just started to go to different centers that are supposed to be child centers and autism centers and started asking questions like, hey, where are all the kids? And got it on video. And at last check, 150 million views just on X alone of his reporting that broke this whole thing wide open. So one kid with a cell phone completely outflanked CBS, NBC, ABC, all the local affiliates in Minnesota, the Star Tribune, the New York Times, Washington Post. Congratulations. Way to go. A 23-year-old kid just made you look stupid. Anyway, getting back to why Minnesota, I think, is primarily a red state outside of Minneapolis. Listen to this woman talking about how not everybody is trying to literally ambush and attack ICE. They're actually getting cheered in some parts of the state. This is cut number 3. Go.
You know, I love the suburb I'm in. So ICE was just in my suburb at our local grocery store while I was there, and they were grabbing somebody. Nobody in the grocery store stopped them from doing their job. Everybody was clapping and excited about ICE being there. People were hooting and hollering, chanting for ICE. Oh. You gotta love small towns in Minnesota, honestly. We are so stoked. And honestly, you know what I did after the ICE agents got done with their job and what they were doing? I said, can I buy you all, like something to drink, something to eat? And I did.
And she did. Good for her. And that's the way these folks should be treated. They are heroes. They should get a ticker tape parade. I hope Trump does that. A, because they should be celebrated for impossible jobs that they're doing. Minneapolis, you see how cold it is there? You think it's cold in New York right now? Guess again. And this is why the Vikings built a dome. 2 of them, as a matter of fact. They built the Metrodome, which they had like a tarp on top. It was really kind of a weird thing. And then one day, I showed my son this video recently. That's why it kind of came to mind. This was 2010, I want to say. You can look it up. Elias, look that up, actually, while you're there. Did the Metrodome collapse in 2010? I want to see if I got this right. I think it was even like during the season. Was it December? Anyway, yeah, it had to be because it was snowing probably, right? So I'm probably right on the month. Anyway. Wow, look at that, Elias. December 12th, 2010. I'm remembering things from 16 years ago. The memory's not gone yet. But yeah, they had this weird tarp as a roof, and then it got too much snow, and then the tarp, collapsed because that's what happens from weight. So then they built another dome with a glass ceiling so the sun could come through. So when you watch a Vikings game, it kind of looks like it's outdoors. And that's nice and everything. But again, I'll share this stat until I'm blue in the face. The Vikings went to 4 Super Bowls in the 1970s. All right. Just like the Steelers did, except they didn't win any of them. Well, and obviously they got there, though, I think, because if you're an NFC team like, the Cowboys or the Rams or, most other teams, you had to go play in that horrible stadium that they played in that was outdoors. And teams couldn't survive up there, right, in January. Then you build a dome, and then suddenly you host a couple of NFC championship games, and you end up losing to a team like Atlanta one year, who's a dome team, and came up there and beat you because you took away your one advantage. The Bears, God bless them. I'm a Chicago Bears fan. We're playing tonight. I'm sorry, on Sunday night at 6:30 against the Rams. It's going to be the wind chill will be nearly minus 20 degrees. Minus 20. You think the Rams, Southern California, also play in a controlled environment? You think they're going to like playing there? No, and yet they're 3.5-point favorites. For the life of me, I cannot understand this. The Bears are the higher seed. They won their division, and a wild card team from Southern California with a quarterback who's never played well outdoors. I think Stafford is like 1-10. He's the quarterback of the Rams, and I know you're not listening to WFM right now, but I'm going off on a tangent, and I'm going with it, damn it. Stafford has like a 1-10 record when he plays in games where the temperature is 25 and below. Here it's going to be nearly 25 below. So I don't know why the Rams are favored here. And you can mark and save the tape. Bears win this game, and they either go to Seattle or will host the 49ers come the following Sunday for the championship games. Anyway, went off on another tangent. Sorry about that. But since we're talking sports, why not just talk about John Harbaugh? Again, I don't understand the Ravens. You have a coach that has led you to Super Bowls, who gets you in the playoffs every year. Here's my stat, okay? And this is my favorite one. The Jets have had 21 head coaches since 1969. Guess how many coaches the Pittsburgh Steelers have had since 1969? I'll give you a hint. You can count it on one hand, and it ain't 5, 3. 3. Chuck Noll, Bill Cowher, and Mike Tomlin. 3 in how many years is that? 57 years? That is impossible. Like no other franchise, I don't care what sport, is even close to something like that. So that's stability. And the Jets, I don't know, they should go after Tomlin. They won't. And it's just going to be another miserable year. I would say in New York, but it's in East Rutherford, New Jersey, where they share a stadium with the Giants, which is the ugliest stadium that cost $1.4 billion you will ever see. Sorry. I mean, it's gray throughout the whole thing. There's no history in it whatsoever. It looks like a big Bose radio, if you remember those. And they spent more money on that thing than Jerry Jones did on his stadium, where they could host Final Fours and they could host all these events indoors because it has a retractable roof. And it's a beautiful stadium by all accounts. And they paid less money to build it. You know why? not the union touch, we'll put it that way, that made MetLife Stadium so ugly, and they can't either put a roof on that thing, which I hate domes, but fine, you can at least get more money out of it, or just start all over again. No one will be mad if MetLife Stadium goes away, no question about it. Anyway, that was our sports block on a Friday night, and this is Joe Concha. This is the Joe Concha Show. Yes, we wrap this puppy up in just a moment.
This is the Joe Concha Show, 77 WABC. It's the Joe Concha Show.
Joe Concha.
Joe Concha.
Joe Concha.
77 WABC.
This is not country music, my friends. This is 38 Special. Hold On Loosely from the mid-'80s. This was rock and roll. It's now country. See it all around you. Good loving gone bad. Oh, I don't do a Southern accent well at all. All right, Elias. Mercy. No mas. You have. My mind goes back to a girl I met some years ago. Who told me? All right, we gotta go. Anyway, so Gavin Newsom had a conversation this week with Ben Shapiro. All right. Now I'll give Newsom some props because at least the guy was willing to go head to head with a person who has a very, very big brain. And that's the big brain on Ben. If you listen to his show, and I try to, the guy just makes some really valid points and doesn't throw the emotion into it. Doesn't have to yell and scream. He's like Charlie Kirk in that sense. And Ben's always willing to talk to anybody, anytime. He has shared on his show that he has contacted The View on multiple occasions when they say that conservatives are too afraid to come on our show. That's what those hens actually say, that they're just too afraid to face Joy Behar and Sonny Hostin and Anna Navarro. Yeah, huh? So he says, yeah, I would call them and literally go directly through the executive producer and say, I'm available tomorrow. I will fly in and I'm happy to come on your show. And they always find an excuse. So Shapiro had to settle here, I guess. And he talks to Gavin Newsom instead. And this is a great breakdown of 4 questions that Shapiro asked Newsom, that Newsom, who is an exceptional liar, who can think on his feet, but here, because Shapiro asked such pointed questions that didn't leave a lot of wiggle room, even for a snake like Newsom to get out of. Here's 45 seconds of glory. These are highlights from Shapiro's conversation with the California governor. Cut number 8. Go.
About radically lowering the income tax rates in the
state. California has tax. I mean, there's 16 states right now. Let's talk about those 16 states.
Well, why don't we talk about California? This is the question that you're not wanting to answer, which is whether boys can become girls.
Yeah, I think I'm for the grace of God. Yeah.
When AOC said this week that ICE should be abolished, you disagree?
Oh, I disagree.
Your press office tweeted out that it was state-sponsored terrorism. Our ICE officers obviously are not terrorists.
Yeah.
A tragic situation is not state-sponsored terrorism.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Basically, the whole family ended up in Florida. My parents ended up near me in Florida. My in-laws, who lived in Sacramento, ended up near me in Florida.
Interesting.
And there may be some reasons for that, Governor. The problem is that when I left, I also took 80 employees.
So obviously Ben has a company he founded called the Daily Wire and employs, 80, 100 people. So when he left California, because Ben, born and raised in California, but it was too much for him, just like it was too much for Elon Musk and Tesla. And it was too much for, obviously, Joe Rogan. Go down the line in terms of people who have fled California, especially major businesses like Oracle, for example. The Gavin Newsom, when he actually is asked questions, and whenever he goes on, say, CBS with Margaret Brennan in that Sunday show, or Kristen Welker on Meet the Press on NBC, or ABC and George Stephanopoulos, whenever he goes on shows like that, what I've noticed is 85% of the questions are about Donald Trump and what are Newsom's feelings on him. In terms of softball questions to a politician, asking about your opponent, and especially Trump, and your feelings on stuff that he is doing is the easiest interview you could possibly do. And what Shapiro did there, which was just a masterclass, was stick to California and don't allow Newsom to pivot out of it. So Newsom has said in the past that he thinks it's unfair for men to play against women in sports, for example. He told Charlie Kirk that.
but then yet he won't in any way, shape, or form rescind any legislation that he signed that still allows women to play against men in sports or men to play against women in sports. So he says one thing and then his actions say another thing altogether. When Shapiro talks about how all of his relatives have moved out of California and he himself moved his company out of California, Newsom has no real answer for that. He just says, that's pretty interesting. When Newsom was asked about his income taxes in his states being the highest in the country, Newsom then said, well, let's talk about 16 other states and their tax revenue and how high they are. And then Shapiro says, well, no, I'm on this show to talk about California and you. Like, in other words, did not let him get away with it. And if we could just see that more from other people in media, Newsom's not going to be your Democratic nominee because nobody likes a phony. And boy, that guy is very much the definition of a phony. Authenticity is not a thing with him. Certainly, that is for sure. Here's something that's also not authentic, or maybe this person actually believes this. But again, we started at the top of the show in case you missed it. The fact that we have a media like the New York Times in their headline saying that, okay, there was an immigrant was shot by an ICE agent, and this occurred 1 week after Nicole Goode was shot and killed by an ICE agent. And they leave out the part that, the immigrant in this case was an illegal immigrant, along with two others who attacked an ICE agent with a snow shovel, which could have killed him, and therefore the ICE agent shot the guy in the leg. They leave the part out about him being illegal, leave out the part about him being accosted with a shovel, that if you hit somebody cleanly even once in the head with that, lights out, it's over. Well, here is cut one, and a Minneapolis city council member saying that this ICE agent who shot this guy who attacked him with a shovel is just a member of the community. Cut one, go.
It was another inflection point where a community member, a Latino person, was shot. And that's another dramatic moment of escalation. And we don't know what happens next.
Wait. Again, you are now defending the guy who attacked federal law enforcement with a shovel, probably attempting to kill him, and you're calling it escalation on ICE's part? And this is why this thing in Minneapolis, unless Trump invokes the Insurrection Act, right, and just squashes this thing out. It's not like, oh, you're squashing peaceful protests in the First Amendment. No. This thing has gotten way out of control, and it's because of city leaders like Tim Walz calling ICE the Gestapo and Jacob Fry mocking the injuries of ICE agents who were attacked by those who say they're just peaceful protesters. Said that the ICE agent who shot Nicole Goode, he didn't really hurt himself. He could have closed a refrigerator with his hip and injured himself the same way, until you learn that, he had internal bleeding from getting hit by that SUV driven by Nicole Goode. Or city council members like this who say that members of the community are being attacked by ICE, members of the community attacking ICE with shovels, and that's what you're defending? It's like defending cancer. That's where Democrats have gone at this point. And as I said, you have to be on the offense if you're Republicans every time. And all you have to do every time that the media or anybody else brings up how horrible ICE is, bring up how horrible the people are that they're apprehending and deporting from this country, give specific examples and ask them to defend that. And I guarantee you will win that argument. Anyway, this has been a very fast hour. I want to thank all of you for tuning in on a Friday night. I want you to have an awesome weekend. Enjoy the show and enjoy the snow. If you are in the New York City area, 1 to 3 inches, that's fine. You can drive in that. It's not going to cause any power outages. It's pretty to look at. It's January. Embrace it. Put on a fire. Read a book. Relax. Enjoy yourself. And I'll see you again on Monday night, 9 p.m. And you'll also be able to catch me at 11 a.m. on Sunday in my time slot there as well on Red Apple Audio Networks and on WABC here in New York. Until then, this is Joe Concha saying bye-bye.
Rural Americans deserve access to the best of what our nation has to offer, especially healthcare. Across every state and every community, America's rural hospitals are the first line of defense, protecting our families, neighbors, and loved ones. No matter where you live, hospital care doesn't clock out. They're there 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. Each year, America's over 5,000 hospitals care for millions of patients, providing 24/7 emergency care, delivering babies, cancer treatments, and other life-saving care that patients rely on. Behind every one of those patients are doctors, nurses, and caregivers working tirelessly to keep people healthy and safe. Hospitals are our community's lifelines. They employ our neighbors and keep our families healthy. But now, some in Congress are threatening access to care. Tell Congress, protect patient care to keep America strong. Don't cut rural health care.